And this is the first lecture of sociolinguistics. This is lecture 1. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the following. Why do we study language? The characteristics of language. We have 4 characteristics of language. Number 1, language is a system. Number 2, language has the potential to create a new meaning, and language can have multiple functions. Number 3, language can be diverse. Now, going to the first topic, why do we study language? In fact, when we study language, we discover more about different fields of knowledge. Studying a language implies that we know about other topics. For example, we will be able to know about sociolinguistics, we will be able to know about applied linguistics, psycholinguistics, and artificial intelligence. Now, we are going to give a definition of these terms one by one. The term psycholinguistics is defined as it is the study of how a listener recognizes words and utterances, or how damage to our brains results in certain kinds of language disorders. So psycholinguistics is concerned with studying the language within the mind, how our mind recognizes language, how do we recognize words or sentences or utterances. It also studies the harm that can happen to the brain and the results of having brain damage with the consequence of certain language disorders. The other field of knowledge is called applied linguistics, and it is a branch of linguistics where we study how to learn and how to teach different languages. We are also going to know about sociolinguistics, which, as you know, is about the relation between language and society and the different varieties of language people use. Artificial intelligence is the study of how to make computers more sophisticated or more complex. Nowadays, we have a lot of complicated machines like computers, depending on a different type of intelligence called artificial intelligence. Now, who is interested in language? Who are the people other than the linguists who are usually talk about language, linguistics? In fact, it is not only people in the linguistics field who are interested in language. Other people, different people from different fields of knowledge can have language as their interest. For example, language-related issues are discussed almost every day in newspapers, in television, in lectures, etc. An example of this, a lot of people sometimes complain about the jargon used in a classroom. A jargon is an unofficial language, is not standard language, so people might talk about this more and more every day. And other topics include coining new words. Nowadays, you can come across this topic in the internet, in the newspaper, that new words in the language are created. And other people would talk about the importance of political speech. And a political speech is actually made of language. So it is not only the linguist who is really interested in language. Other people, other topics related to language are always discussed in the newspapers, on the TV, or in university lectures. Now, what is language? Now, to know what is language, we need to know its characteristics. And as I said, there are 4 main characteristics of language. We are going to deal them one by one. The first one is language is a system. Language is considered as a system. Number 2, language has the ability to create new meanings. Language can have multiple functions. It can do more than one function, and language is diverse. Number 1, language is a system. Language is a systematic way of combining smaller units into larger units for the purpose of communication. Now, looking at language as consisting of smaller units, and I call them morphemes or sound of the language. Language is a systematic way of joining those units together or combining them together. Why? To make larger units, and those larger units are used for the purpose of communication. Let's take an example. If we have two morphemes, the word free and dumb, and if we combine them together, we have the word freedom. And instead of saying word, I would call it lexical item. So language is consisting of units or morphemes, and when we join those units, we get words or we get lexical items. Another example is the word useful, which consists of two different morphemes, use and full. Now, combining these two morphemes together again would give us a lexical item, useful, as you can see in the example. Now we move from joining smaller units, making them words, into joining words together to make sentences. Now, the field of knowledge that helps us join those words or those lexical items correctly is called syntax. If we have this example, book, very, this is useful. Now, this is an incorrect sentence. It is an ungrammatical sentence. Now, knowing the rules of language, we can rearrange this sentence and make it a true or make it a grammatical by arranging it in this way. This book is very useful. So according to the rules of language, according to the rules of syntax, we can rearrange the structure of this sentence to make it grammatical again. Now, we have some definition of those terms. The word phonemes refers to the sound of language. Any sound in the language is called a phoneme, and a collection of those sounds would make lexical items or would make words. So a phoneme phonemes refers to the sounds found in our language. Example, K, T, S, those are all phonemes. A lexical item refers to the words. A lexical item can consist of more than one phoneme, and I call it either a word or I call it a lexical item. An example of this, the word help, the word homework. Notice that the word homework consisting of two words, home and work. Homework. So we have a lexical item consisting of two different phonemes. Now again, we go back to the word syntax, which refers to the grammatical rules which determine how words can be combined. So there are certain rules that I need to follow so that my sentences or my utterances would look grammatical, would sound grammatical. Otherwise, I would talk fragments. An example of the use of syntax, if we have a phrase like the nice book, where the adjective nice precedes the noun book, I cannot say book the nice, because according to the grammatical rules or according to the syntax of the language, the adjective needs to come before the noun. Again, a sentence like is happy Jane is also not acceptable or ungrammatical. We need to put the subject at the very beginning of the sentence, then the verb to be, then the adjective. So the correct order of the sentence is Jane is happy. So the use of the star or the asterisk means that the sentence is ungrammatical, as you can see in the example. Now I move to the second characteristics of language. We said that the first characteristic of language is that language is a system. It is a systematic way of combining, of joining lexical items or units together for the purpose of communication. Now, the second characteristic of language is that language has the ability, has the potential to create new words, to coin new words. Now, let's take an example from Arabic. Nowadays, we can have a word like yu'atmit, a word like atmada. Those words are not originally Arabic words, but it is the ability of Arabic language to create or to adopt new words into its vocabulary. So a word like atmata comes from English, from automatic, and the verb yu'atmit comes from automatize. So this means that language has the ability to adopt, to borrow new words, to create new words and add them to its vocabulary. In English, again, we have a different way of creating words by adding another morpheme to the beginning or the end of the word. For example, a word like important can become unimportant. So we have created a new word by adding the morpheme "an" at the very beginning. Now, there is a very important thing that we can know the meaning of those words easily in spite of the fact that we have not come across them before. A word like bossy, which comes from the word boss. A person who is bossy is used to always order people around, giving them instruction, etc. It comes from the word boss. So we can easily understand what these new words mean. Unimportant means not important, and bossy to order people around. Now, this particular characteristic of language would distinguish human languages from other languages. Take an example of the language used by birds, which have a very limited range of messages. But when you come to the human languages, they are not limited. You can always create new words. You can always add new words. You can borrow other words from other languages. Language can have multiple functions. Now we have, as I said, 4 characteristics. Language is a system. Language can create new words, and language can have multiple functions. We can use language for more than one function. It is a multi-function phenomenon. Now, what are those functions? Language can be used in different ways. It can be used referentially. It can be used affectively, and it can be used aesthetically, and it can be used phatically. Now, we are going to give an example on each case and see what does those terms mean. Number 1, language can have multiple functions, and the first function is using language referentially. Now, referential use of language can be found in examples giving information or examples giving instruction the speaker wants the hearer or wants anybody listening to him to do. The purpose, of course, is to transmit accurate information or non-ambiguous information. Now, having an example like, put those papers on the table. Put those papers on the table. Your instruction, your direction to the listener is referential. Why? Because it gives him or gives her information about what you want to place on the table, which is the papers, and where you want him or want her or where you want them, the papers, placed. You want them placed on the table. So this is a type of referential use of language. If you say, open this door, this means that you are using a language referentially because you are giving information, because you are giving accurate information. The listener or the person listening to the speaker knows what door is meant, what door the speaker means. So this is a type of how language can be used referentially. The other use of language is language can be used affectively. And the affective use of language is when the speaker expresses his or her feelings or his or her attitude. Let's take this example. Wow, she is beautiful. Now, saying a sentence like this in such a manner or in such a voice would express my feeling toward the person I'm seeing. Or if you say, oh, he is coming. So I am expressing my feeling towards some person. I'm showing my attitude, if you like, about how beautiful some person is. So the affective use of language is actually concerned about the attitude or the feeling of the speaker. Number 3 is using language aesthetically. Using language aesthetically. Aesthetic language is usually used in poetry, not in science. Aesthetic language can attract people's attention. A language which is performing aesthetic function is designed to please the senses through actual or imagined sounds and through metaphor. For example, you cannot use a metaphorical language in science You can use it in poetry. You can use it in writing a story, in writing a letter to your, say, girlfriend. It needs to please the person receiving the letter or receiving your speech, so it appeals to their senses. It has the ability to attract them because of the rhetorical images or assimilations that you use. An example of this is speech is silver, silence is gold. This is a type of using language aesthetically where you feel how the language is rhetoric, how language is symbolic. This type of language is typically used in poetry. Finally, language used phatically. Language used phatically. The phatic function of language is used to keep communication lines open and also to keep the social relationship between people well. Actually, when you use language phatically, you are maintaining cohesion within social group. An example of this would be when you see a person for the first time and you want to open a topic with him. You want to start a conversation with him. So maybe you would start talking about the weather, saying, oh, it is very warm today. Or you would say, how are you today? This type of language, this type of phatic use of language is meant to keep the communication going on between people. It means that the social relation are kept going on between people when they meet for the first time. It gives a message to the person who receives the first greeting that the other person is willing, is accepting him. He doesn't mind having a conversation with him or with her. So as I said, this type of language refers to everyday usage of language. It refers to small talk between people to share feelings or to establish a mood of sociability. It actually makes people more sociable, and actually phatic language is for the sake of interaction that opens up a social channel. Channel. An example of this, as I said, greetings or discussions about the weather, etc. The last point that we are going to discuss is the final characteristics of language, which is language is diverse. An example of this is the diversity in the English language. There is more than one variety of English. For example, English varies between countries. Now, if you go to India, they speak English. And if you go to America, they also speak English. But the question, are the type of languages spoken in India, are the English spoken in India the same as the English spoken in America? No, these are varieties of the English. So language is diverse, though they speak the same language, but they are different varieties of the same language. And the example we have here is Indian English and American English. Now, also language use varies within the country itself. Now, let's take Arabic as an example. Classical Arabic and modern Arabic. Classical Arabic is totally different from modern Arabic. And formal Arabic is also very much different from informal Arabic. An example of classical Arabic is the type of language that we have in the Holy Quran. And modern standard Arabic or modern Arabic is the language that you can see on the TV that is used by news broadcasters. So the type of two Arabics, if the derivation is right, the two Arabics used are different, but they refer to the same language. So language is diverse. It can vary from one country to another, and it can vary within the country itself. Formal Arabic and informal Arabic are also two types of Arabic, two variety of Arabic, but they also refer to the same language, but they are different variety. Formal Arabic is the type of language that you use at the university with your teachers, that you use with your manager, but an informal type of Arabic is the one that you use at home, that you use with your close friend and people that you are close to. This is the end of the first lecture, we have talked about language in general. We talked about the topic of why do we study language, and we said it makes us discover more about other fields of knowledge. And we said we have known a little bit about psycholinguistics, a little bit about social linguistics, a little bit about applied linguistics. All those fields of knowledge implies learning a language or studying a language, and we have learned more about language by studying its characteristics. And we also considered the multiple function of language and also the different ways language used. This is the end of the first lecture. Thank you very much.